Carl, September.
Yes.
How are you, my man?
Great, JD. How are you, bro?
Good, thank you. Welcome to the JD Custom Jam Jar series.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's great
Super
to have you
keen
here,
be
man. Yeah, and I'm excited to have this chit-chat with you.
Yes.
And to find out about what you are about and what you do. And yeah, tell me, man.
Cool. So yeah, obviously I'm here because I'm a musician. Yeah.
Yeah, that
live
makes
performer, and songwriter. So usually well, my main thing is singing. Yeah.
Yes.
But I do solo shows where obviously playing an instrument needs to go with that. So acoustic guitar is my main thing. Playing acoustic guitar and singing. That's my solo act. Got a bunch of other acts. I've got my band September Rain, which is a more pop rock band set up. You know, a 4-piece, myself on electric guitar and vocals, bass guitar, a lead guitarist, and a drummer. Whereas my solo acoustic setup is just myself and a percussionist playing cajon and a trigger pad. Yeah, so a smaller setup. I've also got a project called Mashed Potatoes. That's for corporates because we do mashups. Yeah.
That's great, man. You're quite out there, huh?
Yes, and then the other thing, the marching band type vibe,
Yes.
that's Move and Groove that I perform with as well. So that's more parade style things. We, as the name suggests, we move around while we play. So I've got sort of a speaker in a backpack that's battery powered.
Sick.
That my voice and guitar goes through, and there's a drummer with the marching band sort of set up, and a saxophonist as well. So yeah, there's move and groove there as well.
You know, I've heard a lot of what you play, and you know, you've got such a nice acoustic vibe, quite melodic, and you know, your singing is like probably inspired by John Mayer and those type of bands. That's my question to you: is who are your inspirations?
Inspirations. It's interesting because it's an interesting question for me because it's quite vague. I never thought of who inspires me, who am I going to model my music after, but there's obviously clear influences, one of them being John Mayer.
Okay, so
definitely.
I hit the needle on the head.
You really did. You really
Cool.
did. So John Mayer is definitely a big influence, I would say, in the stylings and the way I voice my chords, and the way the song structure works out. Definitely, even if it wasn't a very conscious decision.
Yes.
There's many of those stylings of John Mayer in there, a bit of Dave Matthews Band maybe as well.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Yeah, and then lyrically there's bands that are not even of a similar style to those two, but lyrically the way I follow narrative is more Switchfoot is a big influence of mine in terms of songwriting and lyrical writing. 1,000 Foot Crutch, which is a band completely separate to the sound that I have.
Yes.
Paramore as well. So yeah, I think it's more of a coming together of everything that I've listened to and what I've enjoyed from all of my favorite bands, compositions really that have come together. My decision on what inspires me or influences me in my own music was certainly less specific than thinking of those acts, but it was sort of listening to what's working and what's popular currently in terms of rhythm, what rhythmical elements across different genres are working. So a lot of my picking rhythms when I'm in the picked sections of my songs, my solo songs, it's following a drum and bass pattern.
Okay,
it doesn't come across as drum and bass, but those rhythms are currently popular. So dum da dum da dum da dum da.
That's right.
I just take that to an acoustic guitar and go dum da da dum da 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 and imply a little swung eighth thing. So it's drum and bass with a bit of swing in it, and swing pop has had its place recently as well, and even on the digital side, electro swing. So like that swing rhythmical element I've noticed has come back a little bit. So I've merged some of that in, and then well, I mean, I didn't perform today with a percussionist or anything, it's just me, but a lot of that 4 on the floor driving or swing elements to add to that.
No, that's great. And I see that you alternate a lot with your fingerstyle and your plectrum use.
Yes.
I saw you hide the plectrum on top of your
Right.
guitar there.
Yes.
That's quite interesting, man. I like that.
It took me a while to figure out a solution to
Okay.
that. Dropping picks all the time, and we would have seen the pick
Press
in the,
stick, you know.
until I saw
On your nice expensive guitar, you know.
yeah, goodness me. No.
What a great idea, man. Press stick fixes everything, man.
I used to just drop picks all the time.
Putting
and have
us
a
out
bunch
of business,
spares.
man.
Press stick. Since the dawn of time.
Nice. So, you know, I know that you travel around as your solo act or even as your band, and this leads to my next question of your opinion on the South African music industry.
Okay, yeah, it's quite a loaded question. I'll try to break it down. I think as artists, as musicians, it's a bit of a struggle now financially, just because of where the economy is at. I mean, when the pockets are tighter, the entertainment industry as a whole, I think, is one that takes a hit. So I think there was a boom in the local music scene about a decade or so ago, with bands like the Parlor Tones and Prime Circle and Just Ginger and Wonderboom, just to name a few, where they really came out booming. Their songs were on the radio all the time. Their shows did well. They traveled around, and since then, I think, I think radio play actually has a lot to do with that, because alternative music was popular then.
That's true.
I think once alternative music fell out of favor with local radio, the struggle for South African bands started to happen. Some bands adapted with a more pop styling. Some had
more commercial.
More commercial for sure. Used synths to appease the electronic demand as well. But rock bands certainly have struggled, and alternative music and more original music that's not the run of the mill. Certain bands have done well with that over the past few years, like Gangs of Ballet, Graham Watkins Project, Short Straw, Colonial Estate, bands like that. They've done well, but even those bands are now starting to struggle or disband or not gig as much. And and a lot of the frontmen of those bands are now doing solo acts.
Solo projects
as well.
With the Loop Station.
Exactly, Jeremy Loops, Matthew Mole doing very, very well for themselves, Majosi as well.
That's right.
And I think it's purely because if the pockets are tight of people that are booking entertainment, it's easier to have yourself there as a solo act that gets paid than having to pay a band. And if you do well, like Majosi and Matthew Mole, then you can have session guys that you can pay because you've already branded yourself as a solo act. So I think it's all becoming more centered on a solo act than a band. So I think that's where the industry is sort of going, and maybe it's not only a South African thing. If you think of the biggest acts in the world right now, it's generally solo names. It's not a band anymore.
Yes.
Certain bands are really big, but it's because we're nostalgic about them from back in the day,
past,
from a decade or so ago. But I think the South African music scene, there is a bit more of a peak in having local music recently, whether it's at a restaurant or a live show or a market. I think that side of the industry is doing very well. It's where I've become very busy recently, is performing at markets and restaurants and those sort of areas where people don't have to come in and pay for music. I think people aren't budgeting for that anymore at local music venues. I think that's struggling more now than it has been in the last 5 or 10 years. But people are happy to come in where they don't have to pay for the music, where they're coming into a market or a restaurant or an event like that.
Well, it's the event's responsibility to look after the artist. And
so
people just come in to enjoy a time there and listen to good music.
Like festivals. Festivals, you're there for the experience more than paying for an act as well. So that's where I know for myself, solo stuff has been going a lot better. September Rain's been quiet for the last year. It's really tough on the band scene right now. But solo stuff going very good, and those other projects that we mentioned earlier doing very well. Move and Groove and Mashed Potatoes, because they're geared more towards corporate vibes.
It feels like there's a shift in consciousness where South Africans are starting to enjoy a lot more music locally, like you were saying, and also with the availability of social media and exposure to all these things, people are starting to change their consciousness towards South African music. It looks like local artists are getting a lot more respect in the last couple of years. It's been a bit of a shift, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think it's because people are slowly realizing that we do have local acts. I mean, you speak to majority South Africans, they'll hear a local act song on the radio, they won't think it's local, and they'll actually assume that it's international. So slowly but surely there's this awareness that we have local musicians, we have local acts, and they're high quality.
That's
to the point where you won't even guess that they're South African. You think it's an international act.
It's got to do with gear being a lot more advanced and a lot more accessible. And also I think radio is now being forced finally to play a lot more local stuff, which is which is a good thing. I always say it's about time,
Yeah, it is about time. I mean, radio has so much power, and if the radio plays more local music, people know that there's local music.
That's right.
You know, so
that's right. It's
hopefully
important
that
for
grows.
them, number one, to be supportive of the South African music industry.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So hopefully that grows. I mean, we can only hope, because radio is definitely the biggest medium through which people hear music.
Or listen to new stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if there's 10% local music being played and 90% international music being played, that means the best South African act is only probably going to be known by 10% of the country, you know. So that's
Which makes absolutely no sense. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's important as a South African music station to boost the South African music industry, to be supportive of it. You know.
Radio stations are a business as well. They want to,
Of course.
they want to get as many viewers as they can. If they think by playing international music stars' latest singles is going to do it for them, I can understand why that's going to go that way.
This is what I feel is any brand needs to be marketed. So obviously choosing a brand as a retailer, like selling Gibson in your shop, is obviously going to do well. But when
Yes.
you've got another brand that is an excellent quality and that is not known, putting marketing towards it and believing in that brand will obviously increase the sales. So I think it
Yes.
is the responsibility of radio stations to support their local artists.
Yeah, I think you bring up a very good point there. Branding. I think from both sides. I think if local artists brand themselves better, then it won't be a case of you need the favor of radio or the favor of
That's right.
of TV and your music videos. You'd be doing them a favor, or rather, let me say it like this: them playing your music or having you on, Mnet's soundcheck music video part. People will want to watch that if your branding's correct. So
Exactly.
I think it's on both sides, and I
they
think
work
it is
hand in
getting
hand.
better. I
Yeah.
think there is more awareness of branding in local music right now.
Definitely. So Carl, if you have to give advice to the South African youth, what would it be?
Pick something you love and put time into it. I think it comes down to that. I think in such an instant age now that we're living in a, information age, we want everything instantly. I've noticed with my students, my music students, and even their parents, often the first question they ask is, okay, we're trying to choose between piano and guitar, which one will they be able to play better first? And like, well, depends on which one they love and they practice more. Okay, how long will that take? And well, anywhere between 6 months and 10 years, depending on
That's
how often
right.
you practice. So it's instead of
How much you put in?
Yeah, I'd love this focus on, okay, I'm here now, how much time until I'm good? I wish that would go away and it would just be like, okay, if I enjoy this, I'm going to work at it. I'm going to get better at it. I'm going to enjoy it and create my own music and play music that I like. That's how it was for me.
And slowly watch it progress.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even have the YouTube videos and tutorials and things online and technology that this generation now has. I would just get home from school, and before I did my homework, I'd practice guitar for an hour, drums for an hour, play around on the piano a bit, try write songs, and there'd be at least 3 hours put into my music, and no one had to tell me. I wanted to put the work in, and that's what pays dividends. It's not going to a lesson and thinking the lessons themselves are going to get you somewhere. It's the work on your own. So my advice to the youth, I guess you can apply it in general anyway, is to find what you love and put time into it. Don't make it someone else's responsibility to tell you to do things so it pays off in the future. You should have that goal-orientated attitude.
That direction.
Exactly, yeah. Just put time into it.
Nice, I like what you're saying.
yeah.
Carl. I like what you're saying. So now, my last question to you is, what flavor are we adding to the jam jar?
What flavor?
Yeah. Heavy metal.
Heavy metal flavor. A bit of iron for you. Iron's good for you. Let's get a better scoop of that.
Nice.
I know, I like it.
Pop.
Yeah, it's pop. I
Pop.
think it'll be popular.
I think that's a good flavor.
Yeah.
Nice. Carl, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, JD.
I appreciate it, man. It was good to chat with you.
Yes.
And I look
It
forward
was
to hearing your
enjoyable.
jams.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Hope you enjoy them. Thanks.
Awesome.